Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Doof Network where we reflect on Warbo's most ritualistic and triumvirate work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are back to talk about Stolen Away 2.Z, out on... So I want to call it On the Lamb, which is the first arc of Twig. Out on a Limb 3.1.
I don't think On the Lamb
is
the first arc of Twig. I think that's what we called our coverage of the first arc of Twig. Ruben.
Is it? No. There's... Oh, man, maybe I'm getting confused. Anyway. And then interview notes too, and a great discussion, questions and predictions, and a little monster corner. So stay tuned for all that coming up later. But first, Stolen Away 2.Z, which is from the perspective of Nicolette, which I think you predicted, didn't you?
I think I hoped.
You hoped. You hoped correctly, because we jump into Nicolette's head, and it starts out with her carrying drinks for everyone else at the Heron Institute as they play smoky cards.
Yeah, I think it's really fun how this chapter actually opens with 1 hour ago. But, this is something TV shows and even sometimes movies do a lot where you sort of cut back and you'll see things from the perspective of another character. So I was sort of instantly prepared to be like, okay, well, by the end of this chapter, I'm going to think Nicolette was doing things correctly from her point of view. Like, it's just really fun to already get you in the headset of, we're going to see the same stuff, but I'm going to have a completely different take on it.
Yeah. And I think that's to some extent true. I wasn't on Team Nicolette, or at least I didn't think she was in the right in what she was doing, but I did, this did redeem her to an extent, at least.
Yeah. She's, I definitely don't blame her as much, as I did before. Before I saw her as a bit of an aggressor, whereas now I understand she's just desperate and under the thumb of Alexander.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that got to me in this was the first sentence in this chapter is Nicolette carrying out a tray of plates. And it's like, it immediately establishes the power dynamic here because she is, yes, it's because she's the newest member on paper, but also she's the only, woman that we see in this chapter, right?
Yeah.
And so it really sets up this quite seedy, subservient power dynamic, which immediately sets up some of the stuff that we're going to see throughout the rest of the chapter very effectively.
Yeah, you're right. Right from the get-go, we understand that she's on the bottom, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And the other thing is, these guys aren't even trying to avoid giving off, mafia vibes. They're in a smoky, hazy room playing cards. Are you serious? Has there ever been a mafia in murder mystery history that didn't do exactly this? It just sort of right from the get-go, I'm like, okay, so this is the mob. That's good to know.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good connection. They are very much set up as the archetypical mob.
Although, that said, it's the other verse, so we take it another step, and there's a reason to have the room be smoky and hazy, and it's because they've been seeing using their augur abilities, and so they want to do the opposite for a bit, which is just a really fun idea. There's always every time we get introduced to a new branch of the practice or something in these stories, it's always so incredibly well thought out, and it's the marriage between the tropes and the reasons for why they exist in this instance is always so great.
Yeah, definitely. That's the great thing about these stories, right?
Yeah. Although, I don't know. I guess because in theory, the point of the smoke is that they're meant to stop seeing, but actually, apparently what they do is they all still kind of do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I guess it's like that. And this whole chapter has this vibe of it, right? This thing of they're kind of, they feel duplicitous, right? This place feels like it's a duplicitous web. And so everything on the surface is yes, we say it's this thing, but actually we're all just doing this other thing.
Yeah. It's all about information gathering and misinformation, isn't it? And that's just sort of built into all of it.
Yeah. I want to talk about one other thing that I noticed at the start of this chapter that kind of led into that vibe, which is the kind of blend between this place being very meticulous and very haphazard. So there's a lot of things about it that seem like everything's really like in order. Like the fact that they took apart and put back this church brick by brick, which is a very kind of meticulous thing to do, right? But then also, Nicolette's room is pretty messy. We get the sense that the whole place is messy. There's like bookshelves in random places, which is very haphazard. And again, it's this kind of vibe of like they set up this one. It almost feels like the entire chapter is talking about how the Blue Heron Institute is all about double standards, basically. Like this aspirational or performative element of being meticulous and being, prepared and all that stuff. But underneath, it's all just like shitty and messy.
Yeah, you're right. Because everything externally facing and everything that other people are meant to see seems quite pristine or authentic, whereas you're right, you get out to the back to Nicolette's room and it's a bit of a dump. I like that.
Yeah.
I also like how, like, as we continue to learn just how shit this place is in every possible vector, like, part of the premise that's established really early on by Nicolette is that Alexander rose to the top in this kind of environment. Like, he is perpetuating it and propagating it because it's what he's good at. And while he's sitting at the top there, he can, continue to have his underlings compete and manipulate each other along the ways that he's the best at, so he can maintain control and manipulate them without being noticed.
Yeah, I mean, he sets up the rules, right? So the rules he set up are the ones that allow him to kind of perpetuate the systems that work for him, I guess.
Yeah, it's the thing. If you have these shit systems, the person who's good at the shit stuff rises to the top, and then they're incentivized to keep it that way because, like, that's what works for them. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. Like we established that there's so much infighting, in this institute, and Miss goes into a bit more of it in 3.1 about how it's Charles who goes into it about how, like, strife surrounds Alexander, so that's why these guys might be more willing to fight. And so, like, hopefully the way that 3.1 ends, that's going to be the vector of attack for 3.2 is pitting, like, Seth and Nicolette and Tanner against each other, which is good. They deserve it.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah. Also, I looked up Blue Herons because obviously this is called the Blue Heron Institute, and I assume that's not an accident. So, like, Blue Heron's most notable thing that kept coming up is they have, like, crazy good eyes. Their eyes can do night vision. They've also got, like, telescopic lenses, so they can zoom in on shit, like, and they get not quite 360-degree vision, but pretty close. Basically, they got real powerful eyes. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But they're also one of the Native American totem animals, and they sort of represent this idea of, like, self-reliance and forging your own path, which I think maybe speaks to the way Alexander has sort of seemingly set up this institute as a bit of an adjunct from the rest of the Bellinger family. Was I interpreting that right? It kind of seems like this is a bit of an offshoot. It's like Alexander's offshoot of the main.
Yeah, there was definitely a few lines where Nicolette was thinking something along the lines of, like, the reason that Alex has this is because of something that he did within the Bellinger family. So yeah. I kind of get that same vibe. It's a little bit up in the air, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess this Blue Heron totem animal stuff made me think that might more be the case, because this might be Alexander kind of trying to forge his own path, and that idea of forging your own path seems particularly important when we're dealing with people who predict the future, and are presumably trying to shape their own.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll have to see whether the rest of the Bellinger family kind of plays into it at all. I suspect they probably won't, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
We get introduced to this snake ring that Nicolette wears here as well, where she has this minor encounter with Chase, and the snake ring kind of, warns her. And it's such a good device to be introduced, right? Like, it's this thing that is so crazy. It bites. I mean, it's never fully, like, we don't get, like, a doctrine on how it works, but obviously the way it seems to work is it bites her when there's danger coming in the next few seconds, right?
Yeah, as you said, it's never, like, completely explained, but I think towards the end of the chapter, the story's being pretty upfront about how it works.
Yes.
But at the start here, you're kind of left to try and piece it together in a really fun way.
Yeah, and it's this great way for device to be. It's this great device to build up tension because it basically lets Walbo like ratchet up the tension with this like external thing just saying, and now prepare for something to happen. Like it's so great, and it pays off so well in this chapter.
Yeah, it's like the Spidey sense, but it hurts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and the fact that it causes her physical pain also just makes it so good because again, it's not just warning her of danger; it's like heightening her adrenaline and like kicking her into fight or flight mode. You know?
Yeah, it's like that thing Charles says towards the end of 3.1. Like every time you see, it opens up a bit of a weakness, and I can kind of see that with the snake ring. Like by letting you know the danger is coming, by stabbing you, it kind of already puts you in fight or flight mode, and
Yeah.
you're already feeling pain. So it's just kind of like you just, your body's already sort of killing itself when the danger's actually about to start. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So Nicolette goes to fetch dessert for people, and she kind of starts reminiscing on how she ended up at the Blue Heron Institute, and we'll get into that horrifying stuff in a bit. But before then, I want to talk about this magical door, because yes, it's like obviously a cool little practical thing to remind about the danger of the brownies, but it's also the exact kind of cool magic shit that you'd see at like magic school, and I'm excited to see more of it. And I really loved the fact that this is the most Harry Potter shit we've seen in the whole story, right? Like it feels like it's explicitly taken out of Harry Potter, this door and what is essentially kitchen elves here, right?
Yeah, basically.
But it comes right before we find out about Nicolette's horrifying past, and obviously it's embroiled with these kind of like rules and dangers in itself. And it's such a fun way of showing us like, okay, this is what, Hogwarts looks like in this world. It's got cool magical shit, but also it's horrifying, and there's horrifying backstories and traumas tied in it. I just think that's great. I just love that.
Yeah, I mean, something we should mention is this isn't the school that Miss wanted to send the Kenneteers to, right?
No, I don't think so. I think that would be insane.
Okay, but I mean, yeah, it certainly doesn't paint a pleasant picture. Like this is a dark mirror to like a Harry Potter school.
It feels, yeah, I know, exactly. It feels like it's Wildbow being like, and this is what it would look like in a normal world,
Yeah, exactly. But I just wonder if it is a different one that the Kenneteers are going to go to, like how different is it? Because I think it would have to be a lot before I'd say it's worth going.
Well, yeah, hopefully it's not as terrible, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are terrible, should we talk about Nicolette's backstory? Because man, that's grim.
What the fuck? This might be the thing that has shook me possibly the most in any of the Wildbow stories for a long time. Like the bit that gets me is that she lay there for days. I can't.
It's pretty rough, isn't it?
That is the most horrifying thing ever to me, is to be lying there in pain and helpless and just having to wait. And I mean, like right here, you start to see how Nicolette is like all three of the Kenneteers' traumas rolled into one. Like we've got Verona's, loving family, in Nicolette's dipshit family as well. She's got like Avery's loneliness. Like she's so isolated and alone in this institute, and even back when she was with her family. And then particularly here at the institute, she's dealing with the same sort of systemic oppression that Lucy has to put up with. So like putting it so early in the chapter, I was just immediately like, well, God, like it's hard to keep blaming Nicolette for things because she's just drawn such a short straw.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way of starting to endear us to her. Because obviously, in the previous chapter, she was the villain, right? She's the...
Yeah, exactly.
She's an outside aggressor fucking with Kennet and the Kenneteers, but this kind of reframes it as, no, she's like obviously been backed into a pretty horrible situation and is mainly just struggling to keep her head above water, right?
Yeah, like I think before this chapter, I maybe pictured her as being closer to a Seth. Like, I assumed she would be, like, this privileged Bellinger who was, like, just trying to compete in the family for her own selfish gains. And that's not really what it is at all. She's definitely a victim. Like I hate the details we get later is she fought her way like tooth and nail when she had these spirits in her head. She was crazy. She fought her way to becoming like a functioning person again. And that was when they approached her, and she was like smart enough basically to say no. And then of course her dipshit family came back into the picture, and so she went running into the Blue Heron Institute's arms. And you're just like, oh, it's so tragic. And that later detail that takes place about halfway through the chapter, where it's just sort of like, just in case you need a reminder that Nicolette deserves better than this.
Yeah,
she had the chance not to, and her family fucked it up again.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, and it's not even all in the past. Like, I think the other big thing that this chapter sets up from here is how vulnerable Nicolette is, like physically.
Yeah.
She has to wear this ornament over the hole that still exists in her skull to make sure only good spirits are getting in. While also having to worry about being infected with like meningitis and stuff. So she's of course dealing with like metaphysical and physical bacteria getting in her head.
Yeah.
And you know, we see this thing get knocked around a bunch this chapter. Like it's so precarious. I can see why she's constantly taking these risks that the other augurs aren't willing to. It's because she is kind of always facing her mortality.
Yeah. Yeah, she's kind of got to prove herself. And I mean, the choice for her isn't, she can't just kind of pull a Seth and like coast or even just kind of do okay, because under that, she's just not going to make it, right? She's just too disadvantaged. She needs to get herself into a better position.
Yeah, exactly. Like someone like Y or Tanner, I think they both like criticize. Oh no, I think it's Chase who's sort of like, oh, you need to be more careful about what you're sending out, but she just doesn't have room to be careful, and she's always got this like, hole in her head, basically reminding her that she's vulnerable. So of course she's not just going to sit there and be careful. Like she's got to put it on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I do like the idea that we're endeared to Nicolette. Like, I don't know. We don't really talk about this in our notes, but I think we should touch on the idea. Like, I ended the chapter wanting more of her, right? Like, and more of her in a way that is not, fully good or bad. It's kind of, she exists in this gray area that I'm excited to see more of.
Yeah, I'm hoping she is present during the negotiations in 3. I'm assuming they'll be in 3.2. I hope she's there for them. Because you're right. Like, I want to see more of her, and I want to see what the Kenneteers think of her as they get to see her. Like, I think that's always the fun part of like going from interludes to meeting characters, is seeing them from the other perspectives. Like, how quickly are the Kenneteers going to pick up on the fact that Nicolette is more of a victim, really, than anything else,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. It depends on, I don't know. I mean, like, obviously the stuff that's happened to Avery is pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on how much she's able to atone for that, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. I also, just before we move on to the next bit, I love this little scene where Nicolette is imbuing crow feathers with like cursed blood things as like fate attack needles. Just because like again, it's just another example of how much depth there is to this world. Like, we get a whole chunk of the paragraph dedicated to very high levelly explaining this whole aspect of the practice that we may never even see again. It's just so cool. Like, there's little Greek versions of the names for the different types of like suffering that powers these bloods. For some reason, she doesn't have happiness blood. It's all like doom blood and toil. It's all types of suffering. It's not like, oh, and here's like bliss blood.
Gross. It's gross.
Yeah. I mean, it raises serious questions about Nicolette's morals, though, as well, because, like, she's gathering all this blood, and that just doesn't feel good. Like, at the status of these people, she's like, one of them, she's like, oh, we found a practitioner who was heading towards doom, and, so we kind of saved him from that in exchange for his blood, and now he runs errands for us, so that's good. And I was like, is it?
Well, they didn't force this guy into that situation. At least not that Nicolette seems to imply.
Well, no, so but they specifically waited until like the doom was manifest enough that it would be in the blood.
They kept tabs on him. They were just being friendly.
Yeah, they didn't want to overwhelm him. No, I mean, like the real one is then she's like, there's one of the blood types is like madness, and she's
Mm.
like, oh, this one really struck a chord with me because she's had issues with. I mean, do you call it mental illness if you're actually being possessed by spirits? Like it's this mixture of back in the Middle Ages they used to think that your brain was infected by demons or spirits or whatever if you were crazy, and that's actually what happened to Nicolette. Um,
Mm.
Anyway, like so, but she's experienced madness, and so she's like, "Oh, the madness blood that struck a chord with me." And I tried to make
Yeah.
sure that the person whose blood I'm milking was pretty happy afterwards. And it's like,
Yeah. See,
maybe you
she's
should take
great.
take a step back and evaluate why are you stealing blood from people? Stop doing that.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. Um, yeah, no, it is funny. So, so Nicolette goes on to bring dessert to these Bélangers, and we get this scene of her basically being sexually harassed by one or two of them, and Alex. Oh, I shouldn't call him Alex. It feels weird. Alexander steps in to defend her, and he does okay. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second, but I just think it's interesting that this is actually the first time we actually meet Alexander, even though he's been mentioned so much up until now, and his
Yeah,
presence is so heavily felt. I didn't even realize the first time through. We don't actually meet him until, a good chunk into this chapter. He's so imposing.
it's a good point. I mean, as you just sort of brought up, it feels weird to call him Alex. Like his
Yes.
presence is so defined that I'm only
Yes.
thinking of him as Alexander, which to actually use someone's whole name is very tough for Australians to do. So the fact that I'm like doing that by default, it really speaks to how well defined he is.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we've skipped over like the brownies in the kitchen a bit, and we'll come back to those because I want to talk
Mm.
about them later. But yeah, obviously, like this whole scene, just in case you had any lingering doubts that these guys weren't a bunch of fuckwits, it's like a group of 20-something guys sleazing on a 16-year-old girl. It's and I think the thing is, like, Alexander defends her, but I didn't believe that he actually gives a shit. Like, he doesn't, at best, I feel like what he's doing is defending his honor by defending Nicolette since she's his apprentice. Like,
Yeah.
I never felt like he was actually thinking, oh, this kind of sexual harassment isn't okay. He's just kind of like power tripping.
Like, yeah. So it's weird, isn't it? Because if you just took his words and not the context, I think it would be, you'd think like, yes, he's jumping to a defense in a good way. But it's got such a seedy like atmosphere that it feels just very inauthentic. And I can't even really put my finger on it, I don't
Well,
think.
he doesn't even do it till later. Like, I think that's the thing. It's like the second or third comment before he finally sort of
Mm.
steps in, and it's specifically targeted at Seth. And it feels like more like he just wanted to put Seth in his place rather than actually defend Nicolette. And then obviously, the way he treats Nicolette later in the chapter, it's obvious he doesn't actually care about her
Yes.
or any of it. So like, yeah, I there's just like, it's just a thing where the one good thing in this scene is Alexander defending her, but I can't even call that good because I don't believe it comes from a good place. I think he's doing it for the wrong reasons, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, yeah, Nicolette is in a shit situation.
Mm. Yeah. Yep, it's pretty shit. So we now that we've met Alexander, we start to see the web of deception and intrigue, coming around. Nicolette needs to go investigate Kenneth, and so she asks to borrow the sanctuary from Alexander, and he agrees. But there's all these terms and conditions, basically. And as she agrees to this and goes to actually do it, she gets into a bit of a confrontation with Seth.
Yeah, yeah. And so those details that you mentioned about how this relationship with Alexander works is like super important. They're sort of playing this game of chess over her future. And of course it's over her future because they're augurs. Um, but basically whenever Nicolette needs anything, Alexander makes her owe him some of her time. And basically they're playing this weird game of chicken with it because if she owes any time after her 18th birthday, then it's like, because she is of age or something, like the contract changes, and then he's free to do all this stuff with her while she's indebted, which includes like marrying her off, marrying her himself.
Mm.
God fucking knows. And so Nicolette's strategy to deal with this is to try and outplay him,
Mm.
despite establishing him as the person who thrives in this environment and rose to the top in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bold strategy.
Yeah, on my first read, I was kind of with her, and I was like, "Oh yeah, look, she's clearly got a plan. Like she seems competent. I'm sure it'll go okay." But on the second read through, it's so obvious to me that it just feels like there's no chance this is going to work. Like it depends on everything going perfectly her way, and it's just not going to happen.
I think the reason it felt like it was never going to work to me is like the crux of her plan is basically that she's secretly in touch with this other Augur coven, who want to snatch her. But
Yeah,
before like she goes, she's trying to milk as much as she can out of the
yeah,
Belangers, and so her premise is, oh, they've equipped me with stuff to evade his sight that he doesn't know about, and so like I'm safe. And I just that never made sense to me. I was like, this guy is like this master who is leading this whole clan, and you think this coven just discreetly was able to give you something that can like dodge all his shit? Like that just I don't know. Like I was instantly suspicious that that was actually the case. And something we see whenever this coven is brought up, she's kind of idolizing it all the time. Like
mm,
she's like, oh, like there's one point where she basically, I'm paraphrasing, but she effectively says, "Oh, I'm not going to have any problems when I move to the coven," and I'm like, "Oh, you don't believe that, do you, Nicolette?" Like,
yeah,
they're in the business of like poaching you from this other toxic place. Like, let's not pretend they're some idyllic group of girls, like, or women looking out for each other.
yeah. It's like there's no way the grass is that green over there.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It'd have to be a real hellhole to be as bad or worse than this place, but like, there's such a long stretch of space between the Blue Heron Institute and good.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe still worth doing, but like, I just, this whole premise of, oh, they've equipped me with stuff to evade his sight. I was like, he's better than that. Like,
Mm.
and then she's like, and I've checked, and he doesn't know. And it's like, yeah, but we just established that there's stuff to avoid augur readings. Like, how do you know he's not? Like, your whole premise is like, I'm dodging him because I did readings, and he doesn't know that I'm dodging him. It's like, yeah, but he could be
No.
dodging that. Like, anyway,
Yeah.
this is why you don't play chess with the masterminds.
Yeah. Yeah, it just feels like it's so unlikely that things are gonna go well. And I mean, they don't, right? You know?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Like, it reminds me. I mean, something I'm constantly going to be doing is like, every time we learn something about Nicolette, I'm sort of using it to reflect on the Kenneteers, and it reminds me of like the fairy gifts, all this stuff. Like, Nicolette thinks she's winning because she's like, oh, I've figured out his trick and I'm outplaying him and I've got secret moves of my own. And it's
Mm.
like, yeah, sure you do, but like, Alexander's been playing this a lot longer. He's got a lot more equipment. Like, what makes you think he doesn't have hidden moves of his own? Like, it's the same vibe as when Verona's like, okay, I think we can outthink the fairy with what the traps are going to be in their gifts. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, they've been doing this for a long time, like Verona.
Yeah. I don't know. It is like that. It's very much you kind of have to assume that the other person isn't going to figure things out, and her plan does not, her plan doesn't account for any interference from Alexander. Like if he figures it out, that like she's just not accounting for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, oh, I suppose she is, in that she thinks she's doing these readings, which will let her know if he is going to figure it out. But
Mm,
yeah, that's assuming that those
that
are
that's
working.
working. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so to go back to Seth and the confrontation with Seth as she's trying to set up the sanctuary. I mean, this guy's a cunt. Like, he's like the walking embodiment of old money privilege.
Hmm.
Um, I love feels like the wrong term, but there's this very powerful line where he's sort of looking at her as they're chatting, and she says, the eye of his that she could see glowed as he looked her up and down, past clothes, past skin, past bone and organ. And this line is really effective at like it takes the male gaze and uses that to show how invasive he's being. Like it's kind of like, upping it.
Mm.
Like it starts from a place of the male gaze with like past clothes, and then it's just kind of like going to, yeah, but he's piercing like her soul, and that feels so much more invasive when the starting point is sort of like this gross male gaze.
Yeah, definitely. It really is the male gaze turned up to 11, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, pretty
I
rough.
mean, that's what this the practice seems to do is take everything, especially the gross and bad parts of humanity, and allow them to be amplified and extended, and that's kind of what's happening here.
Mm. Yeah. Um, Nicolette gets to the sanctuary, kind of walks out of this confrontation with Seth in an outcome that she seems to be happy which is interesting.
Well, she stabs him with one of her
With her
feathers.
feathers,
That
yes, to imbue him with some, omens of shittiness, basically.
Yeah, one of the kinds of suffering that she was prepping earlier. And it sounds like she's not going to let it get that bad, but it's just, a bit of, you know, rivalry, like, a bit of torture between classmates, the
Yeah,
usual.
yeah, exactly. But anyway, so she goes on to the sanctuary, and we get the scene of the happy tree friends, but from the other side, from Nicolette's perspective. Can I don't know if you got this vibe, but compared to Seth, definitely, and even compared to some of the others, she seems incredibly capable. Like, obviously, Alexander is on another level, but from what we see of Nicolette, she seems really good at this, right? Even though she's the youngest, she seems very, very good at this.
Yeah, I guess we don't actually see them doing anything.
Yes,
But
but I've forgotten the one's name, the one who goes to Skype his girlfriend.
yeah.
He comes in and sees what she's doing, and he's like, "Oh, going all out, are you?" And she's just like, "No, I'm not going all out." Like it didn't feel. I mean, maybe it was just her bragging, basically, but
Yeah.
it didn't feel like that. It just felt like she was just kind of like, "Huh, no, yeah,
Yeah, although I think like maybe I mean I don't know enough to say whether she's like a natural talent or anything, but like definitely the vibe you get from Nicolette throughout this chapter is she fucking works hard, and like it was like 2 months of work to put together the Happy Tree Friends. Like she's not just competent, but she works for it, and
yes,
that's almost
definitely."
more important.
She puts in clearly a lot of effort, and
Yeah,
maybe that's the differentiator when you compare her to.
yeah,
I mean,
especially when you
Seth
compare it to
definitely,
Seth.
but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. So we kind of see this happy tree friends thing from the other side. It's great, fun to see.
Yeah, yeah. She drops down some of those advanced runes that we weren't about a couple of bonus bits or extra material bits ago.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was kind of fun to again glance back at those documents to see what she was trying to do with them. But like the thing that really jumped out to me is like when this chapter first starts, and I'm like, oh cool, we're going to see things from Nicolette's point of view. I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what her reaction is to the Kenneteers, and like does she consider joining them when Lucy asks for like peace and cooperation. And I think what's really interesting is we actually don't get to see that. Like she's not even in a position to consider it. They
Yeah,
kind of like Lucy asks, oh, can't we just like work together? But Alexander's over her shoulder, and I think it's even at that point that he like does some weird space bendy shit to kind of be inside the diagram as well. So she's not even in a position to even
she can't even.
think.
Yeah, we
Like,
don't even see her react to it in her head, right?
yeah, exactly. Like she's just not in a space where she can do that, and it makes that moment a little bit more tragic to me because she's not even allowed to think, "Oh, I'd love to, but I can't." It's just she doesn't even get a chance to go that far. She's too under it.
Yeah. Yep. It's yeah. I wish. I mean, this is the question that this chapter raises, right? Is Nicolette in a position where she can discuss like joining the Kenneteers, and if she was in that position before, has she been pushed so far away from that position by what Snowdrop did that's gone, that's off the table now? I don't know. I'm kind of nervous to see it.
The problem is, I can't see a situation where she switches sides anytime soon that doesn't involve her becoming like Charles's mate and getting forsworn because
Yeah. Yeah.
she
She's
has
made too
all of
many
these
promises, right?
requirements that she has to meet for Alexander.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, true.
Like
Like
she's trapped.
she's way too trapped at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So here's something else that's fun in this is we get this perspective of Miss from the other side, like, and it's interesting because we've been seeing the Ken and others from the trio's perspective, and Miss has always been this like the leader of the group and is kind of eternally helpful, but from the other side, it's like this imposing presence that they can't quite get a beat on, and they're kind of like, oh, there's somebody else there, but we can't quite make out the words or whatever. And it's a lot scarier. Like when Miss is
Yeah.
not playing nice to you, she's a lot scarier. I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, and it's a shame the way things look like they're ending up in 3.1 because she'd be so interesting pitted against August because she's kind of, as a Lost. She's a bit of the antithesis of everything that they're about. Like
Yeah.
she is to some extent unknowable. And I mean, I think she was particularly worried about them because if they got their hands on her, I'm sure they'd love to bind her and use her for like, anti-Augur stuff, like against their competitors.
Mm.
So I can see why she's bailing in that respect, but it's like I feel like she would be a big asset against them, and she is in these two chapters.
Mm.
I guess it's just that thing where the second they turn the tables, she's fucked.
Yeah, definitely. Um, cool. So we get to the point where we saw Lucy hit Nicolette with a nettle wisp. And God, this is horrifying from the other side. When we saw that from what Lucy's perspective, it wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, oh, cool trick, and we did it, we beat her. And God, from the other side, it is rough, and it pushes Nicolette into this place of definitely wanting revenge on these Kenneteers.
Yeah, and I mean, because you can see, like, it really affects her. Like, her eyes have been bad since she was a kid because of the whole, like, shower incident.
Yeah.
Like, she has, like, 4 prescriptions that her eyes, like, alternate between, which is just, like, insane and must be such an inconvenience. So it's like, you can see how becoming an augur, someone who specializes in seeing, would have been such an important thing for her. Like, because it means that she can see again and she can see better than others. Like she even has those super glasses now. She's got glasses that let her flick between different types of sight, which I was like, holy shit, I'd become an augur for those alone. But anyway, like, so the idea that now she's just going to be completely blind as an augur and as someone who like has suffered from these vision problems, you can just see how much this gets to her.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely hits her in it really hits close to home for her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. Here's something else that happens in this part, though. Interestingly, we kind of see the Blue Heron Institute, Alexander's reaction to the Kenneteers and their level of power, and they seem to have access to much more power than we thought, right? Like the fact that they're drawing on the Kennet others is actually a much bigger power source than I at least first thought. So much so that they're all kind of like, whoa, like this is wild how strong they are. They seem way too strong for novices.
Yeah, we kind of think of them as these like goofy 13-year-olds who keep getting way too like, diving into the deep end way too much. And we see them from this outside perspective, and these guys are like, wow, they have like access to so much power even though they're novices, and that's actually a bit of a like sore spot for Nicolette that we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, the other thing as well is they're put off by how weirdly versatile they are. And it's just because they're getting stuff from a group of others. Like it's this idea of a commune of others, I think is so alien to these augurs that they can't understand how the Kenneteers are so versatile.
Yeah, I guess it's such a uncommon thing that it just can't, like that it wouldn't jump to mind, right? I guess similar to the thing with the animal masks where they, when Nicolette is looking at them, they look like they have their animal heads. And it's kind of weird enough that none of the people there, with the exception of Alexander, know why that would happen.
Yeah, it even takes Alexander. Well, I was going to say it takes Alexander a while to get there, but actually it doesn't. He's freakishly good at this. It's very concerning.
Oh, yeah. Isn't he great? He's so experienced. Like, he's able to pull together like fuck, he just gets things immediately, seemingly. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it doesn't even take time because he seems like he's figured it out from the get go, from the way he interacts with, like Seth and the others.
He's scarily good. I can't wait to see more of him as a villain. I think he's going to be fun, and
Yeah,
part of that is just because he's very switched on.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, you're right. It's very funny to see, like, from the perspective of the Blue Heron Institute and Nicolette. It's kind of like there's these three young women who have just somehow tapped into like this giant power, and they just feel like reckless teenagers with like tons of power at their fingertips, and they don't really know what they're doing, which is actually kind of exactly what it is. Um, it's just funny how from their perspective, they're just like three girls who are like, drowning and don't know what they're doing, but they don't realize how powerful they are.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I guess it makes me worry that they're that powerful. Like, either they're tapping into some source of power like the Carmine Beast that they don't realize, or like the Kennett others just didn't tell them how powerful they actually are. Like,
Probably for the
which is
best.
not, which doesn't bode well. Like, it seems like it's something that you would want to have them know, like, because if they're powerful, that would draw attention, right? Like, this is the exact circumstance where you want to be careful with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just funny because it's just I don't think it's occurred to the Kennetiers at all. Like they feel like they've got nothing, and they're like in their circumstance, they've got no power. They're talking about trying to do these level up rituals because they feel like they don't have enough power to do anything useful. They actually see Nicolette as kind of weirdly powerful. Like I wonder if it's like there's this grass is greener situation going on between everyone where it's like different types of power and circumstance. They see Nicolette having all this experience as her being powerful, and they don't realize how under the thumb of Alexander she is. And
Mm,
meanwhile, like Nicolette has no idea what the situation is with the Kennetiers and how kind of in danger they are in their own way.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess this is what we were talking about. I think it was 2 episodes ago or something, when it was like the idea of Booker telling Lucy, like, hey, you should try and reach out to more people because all your problems seem really big when it's just you. And like,
Yeah,
having a connection with someone like Nicolette, I think could be beneficial to both groups, just to be like expanding the context of what is going on so that they're not so trapped within their own situations, you know?
yeah, you're right. Because in the world of practitioners, it maybe seems like their circumstances aren't that bad, or they're not that alone. There's people like Nicolette out there who are being you know oppressed and struggling just as much as they are.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um Alexander comes in to help Nicolette get her revenge, and he gives her a dollhouse, basically, that lets them spy on the Kennetiers, and they use this dollhouse to spy on the Kennetiers.
Yeah, I mean, I love how Nicolette kind of gets weirdly self-conscious about her room with Alexander seeing it. Like, that's very relatable. Um, and like what she starts to do as well is as she's like going around her room. This is where we get it took me 2 months to make the Happy Tree Friends.
Mm,
It's like 6 months of work and so many dollars to get all this blood. Like, she's very aware of how much effort and stuff it's taken her to get every scrap of power. Like, she has to work so hard for all this stuff.
yeah.
And, this is why, what we were just talking about, this is why she resents the Kennetiers so much, because they've just kind of stumbled onto all this power and they're just trying to get more. And she's like kind of offended by that because, from her perspective, they're kind of like Seth, right? Like not knowing more about their situation, you can see why she would compare them to Seth as,
Mm.
oh, these are just three women who've
Who
lucked into a
somehow,
bunch of power,
yeah,
and they're just trying to get more. Like, how greedy of them. And
yeah,
that's kind of like what Seth is, or maybe Tanner, or one of the ones who actually tries.
yeah.
Um, Whereas, like, from her perspective, she has to fight to get every little piece of power that she has.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And it's not untrue, right? Like, the Kennedys literally are just three random people that were given power. And they've been given power because it's going to be, like, because they're in a position of being exposed to a lot of dangers, right? Like, it's not like
Hmm.
they don't have their own problems, but there's kind of a truth to what she's saying.
Yes, yeah. The Kennetiers apparently do not appreciate how much stuff they've gotten relative to someone like Nicolette, who's had to fight for presumably much less.
Yeah. Yeah. definitely.
Like she just used 2 months of work on the tree friends. She uses all her blood to do this sort of stuff. Whereas
Yeah.
I think the Kenneteers were worried that it's like, oh no, we're like 30% of the way through all our free gifts.
Oh no, I used up my dog tag and now I have to go visit John to get another one for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing, to go back to the dollhouse, Alexander says they stuff it up the first time because they
Yeah.
do it,
They
and
see a diner.
yeah, they see this diner with a bunch of bodies piled up around it. And what Nicolette specifically says at this point is, "Show me the trio who made me lose my eyes."
Mm.
And okay, so do we reckon maybe the diner is actually something like, is this gonna be one of those things where in a year we're like, oh, of course, because after that all the phrasing turns into like, show me the three with the animal faces, show
Mm.
me, like it gets more specific. So what if the diner is where the trio who killed the Carmine, I don't know, the Carmine Beast's death led to the girls being awoken, which led to Nicolette losing her eyes. Like maybe the dollhouse was kind of skipping over, and I don't know. Like, so what if the diner is where the three people who killed the Carmine Beast are, or something? You know, I guess.
I tried to, yeah. Obviously, initially I wrote it off as Alex making a mistake as well, but I tried to think. I like the idea, but I think the thing that means that can't be true is there's just so little information in here. If Wildbow was going to drop some cool little, Easter egg or whatever, you'd feel like there would have to be something. But it's a diner. Here's the line: a diner with cars around it and figures piled up around it, right? Something like that. That's nothing. Like you can't read any. Like there's literally nothing you can read into there, right?
Yeah.
Other than the fact it's a diner, so maybe it's the goblins that Verona was feeding chicken nuggets to. Like I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it'll be a thing where in a couple of chapters there'll be a scene in the diner, but in the ruins there's a bunch of echoes piled up, or I don't know. And then we'll be able to do something with that. Maybe, probably not. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it seems like there's so little to go off of that it just can't be anything,
Yeah. But okay, so the other thing that happens here as well is Alexander does a bit of a tarot reading, to see what's going on. And I mean, obviously, as our resident tarot expert, ever since All Packed Up, I thought I'd ask you, what do you reckon any of this might mean?
Yep, well, I am a tarot expert, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the ones that we get, right? There's kind of two sets. There's first for the main group, the Chariot, the Fool, Strength, and the Empress. And this is an interesting one to me because if you've done kind of tarot stuff or looked it up, you'll know that tarot cards have different meanings based on whether they're what's known as upright or like facing towards you, or reversed, which is, upside down, basically. And we don't get information on that here. Like, Nicolette doesn't comment on which way they're facing or anything like that. And so it's hard to know if this is because Nicolette doesn't notice, or if they're all upright meanings or what.
Yeah, because doesn't she say it's like, one is front, back, left, and right, or something like that? There's a
they're
directionality
kind of organized
to
around them. So there is some directionality to them, but again,
it doesn't map.
Yeah. So I was kind of looking at it. And so, for example, one that I think is a good example is the Empress comes up, right? Which is about like familial stability and like positive familial relationships, specifically mother relationships. And so maybe that maps to Lucy, kind of. But if it's reversed, it's about like domestic problems, which definitely maps to Avery, right? Sorry, not to Avery, to Verona.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of trying to read into it, but I think it's hard and potentially intentionally so. Wabo has intentionally left some of this info out so that we can't tell if, for example, the Chariot, which is about ambition and overcoming obstacles, or if it's reversed, it's about failing to overcome obstacles and being like weighed down by self-doubt, right? If it's face up, that's a good sign. If it's reversed, it could represent maybe Avery's self-doubt and something going wrong for her, which obviously it kind of does. There's a few like that, right?
Yeah, so I'm wondering something, because Alexander uses this to then call up his mate who knows just enough about finding to kind of give them some basics on the on the Forest Ribbon Trail.
Yeah.
I wonder if the reading here wasn't of the people, but was of the path and the journey.
Yeah, I like
So like
that.
that strength being reversed, like the lack of self control.
Mm.
Maybe that's Snowdrop or like okay, so the chariot example that you just gave, like being about ambition, or if it's reversed, it's about self doubt. Like Avery has that whole bit where she decides to leave her indecision behind. So self doubt
Mm.
obviously comes up explicitly at one point in the path. So
Mm.
maybe it's an actual reading of what Avery's journey in the path is going to be.
Mm. Yeah, maybe. We get these other cards that are put down next to a figure identified as Alpi, right? Which is the moon and the high priestess. And so the moon I like because a reversed moon often relates to insomnia or bad dreams, and so that's like bang on,
Check.
right? The high priestess was interesting to me because it relates to the idea of mysteries or hidden information normally. And I was trying to tie that to
Ooh.
Alpi and I couldn't quite figure it out, but maybe it's meant to be Miss. Maybe there's something to do with Miss here, but obviously they don't quite know where Miss is or they can't quite see her. So potentially that was like a bit of a fluff where it was meant to go for Miss, but they just don't know that she's there or can't quite identify her. So it went to Alpi instead. I'm not sure.
Yeah. From my memory of this scene, Alpi was there. Sorry, Alpi and Miss were both there. So
Yes.
maybe wires got crossed when he was trying to do the reading. Or is Alpi hiding a secret?
Yeah, or is Miss Alpi? They're the same person. That would be a twist. That would be some hidden information.
Yeah, that is the logical leap to make
exactly.
from what we just talked about.
It just did feel like maybe it is that Miss is there and that's what it was. It just felt strange to me. It felt like the card didn't quite fit in a way that I suspect there's something going on. I mean, certainly there's something going on with Alpi, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna attribute it to Alpi having a secret.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicolette uses this dollhouse to spy on Avery, and basically every time we saw the dollhouse in the Paths chapter with Avery, that was when Nicolette was inside the dollhouse, spying on Avery. And so Nicolette makes this deal with the wolf to get involved and basically fuck shit up. And we see it happen, and it's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, and so just while we're on Alexander's a dickhead watch, you notice how... So one of the things that goes on is as Nicolette wants to use this thing and do the blood drowning to appear in the Forest Ribbon Trail, Alexander offers to let her use the box for 4 weeks of her time. Like, that's not even the power. That's just 4 weeks for the privilege of using the dollhouse.
Yeah. And she has to clean it after.
Yes, and when she first brings it into the room with him, he's like, "Oh, I love having an excuse to dust this off. I never use it." So it's like what a dickhead. He's kind of like, "Yeah, I never really get to use this thing. I'm excited to get the chance. Also, give me 4 weeks of your life for the privilege of being able to use it for 5 minutes." Like, I don't know. Like, it uses some of its power and stuff, but still, like, I mean, he's just... Poor Nicolette. Like, he's so obviously playing her. And she has that moment where she lets him be the one who's pouring the blood, and then there's not enough, and she's like, "Oh, I should have seen this coming." And it was like, yeah, like as an augur, you really should have.
I mean, yeah, right. Like I don't know. She's clearly, the situation has led to her letting her guard down a bit too much.
Yeah, and Alexander takes
as we'll
advantage
see
of
at
it.
the end.
Yeah. I think the other thing here is like, as much as he's being a dickhead, like we continue to see how switched on Alexander is. He picks it all up so quickly. He manages to call a guy who knows enough about finding to get the details. Like he's quite versatile himself. Like the only person who picks things up this quickly that we've seen is Miss. Like there's a weird
I see what you're saying, Elliot. Alexander is Miss. That's the twist.
Yeah, I don't know. I started to draw parallels between how good and leadery Miss was versus Alexander, and we'll get to that maybe in 3.1 as Miss comes up. But I'm so Alexander's just going to make such a fun villain. He's so I'm loving to hate him.
Yeah, I'm so excited for him as well. He makes a reference to cutting a Gordian knot as well, which is so funny because obviously that's Alexander the Great did that, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's just like a fun little reference. Like he says he likes to cut the goody. I'm kind of like, do you think if you're a practitioner, you just learn all the famous people who share your first name so you can just make these little references that power up your words a bit more? I think that would be great. Like, who are some other famous Rubens that I could make reference to give my words additional weight?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he must have done. I mean, there's a lot of actual Greek references, particularly in relation to the August stuff, like the different types of suffering blood are all labeled according to well, they've got Greek versions. There's a lot of Greek imagery in auguring, from the sounds of it. So, like, of course, the head honcho is called Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thought it was hilarious. So yes, we see her finally do what we saw happen. She kidnaps Snowdrop, and she reaps the rewards from that.
It's so much fun watching Snowdrop like lying to them here and knowing the gimmick and just being like,
oh my god, it's so juicy. Yes. I love it. When Nicolette's like, and you'll just stay here, right? And Snowdrop's like, yeah. Like, yes, I'll get them.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, yes, Snowdrop, fuck their shit right up.
So good.
It's so, like, she's our little trash devil and I love her.
She's so delightful.
I could really see why people enjoyed following live reads of 2.9 specifically now, because like watching people struggle with this gimmick is just so much fun. The way Snowdrop steals her agenda as well is really just like the icing on the cake. Like, Snowdrop is so useful already.
Yeah, it's like she knows exactly what to do to fuck with them in the perfect way.
Yeah.
So the Blue Heron Institute is burning down, and Nicolette leaves to try and find Snowdrop before she can make it to Kennet. And as she leaves, Alexander watches her go. I love this moment where, as she's kind of freaking out, her ring is just biting her over and over. And I'm like, man, helpful. Thank you. Yeah. So helpful, ring.
Yeah, exactly. It's that vulnerability of seeing again, right? Like, just having this ring biting you, it's just like, how is that helpful? That's just panic inducing. But yeah, I mean, okay, Alexander, like, what a fucking psycho. Like, he just watches her, he's just standing there. It just gives this vibe of like, yep, I knew that's where this is going. I was okay with burning down a chunk of our library to force you into this situation, which is what? Like, I mean, yeah, at this point, I feel like she's either gonna. I can't see how she can switch sides. She's too indebted. She just gave him 4 more weeks of time.
Yes,
she's either got to become like Charles II, or she's going to have to stick with the Blue Heron group. And I don't like either of those options.
What if Alexander dies? Would that get her out of anything? She'd have to watch his body at some unstated point in the future. That's fine. She would owe him 4 weeks, but I think that would be okay. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a question of where do those promises go if Alexander dies?
Yeah, maybe she just has to kill him, and that will get rid of it.
I'm sure he's protected from her killing him by some of the arrangement. But if I don't really want the Kennedys to start killing.
Verona kills him. Yeah, no, they should just be judged during execution. They can just murder whoever they want.
Oh, I get Cherry Pop to do it.
Yeah, send Cherry Pop to do the dirty work.
But yeah, there's some fantastic imagery just to close out this chapter and give you like this ominous sense of waiting for Arc 3. I love the way that Kennet always feels downhill. Like Nicolette sort of says, even as she's driving uphill, there's just this weight to Kennet that makes it feel like she's going down. And she's got these voices whispering in her ear, particularly ones of doom. Which, considering she's heading to Matthew's hometown, bodes ill. Yeah, because obviously he's chock full of the stuff. So we shall. Yeah, I mean, there's a real sense at the end of this arc where I was just like, okay, let's do it.
Let's see what happens.
Now it begins.
Exactly. That's the end of Stolen Away. That's the end of 2.Z. Now, should we go on to 3.1? Nah, let's just end here. All right, see ya. No, so 3.1 is from Verona's perspective, and we basically see Verona and Lucy react to what happened where Nicolette steals Snowdrop, which is fucking crazy. Like, a giant hand comes and just grabs the opossum and then disappears. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's somehow more horrifying from the third perspective that we're seeing it. I think the thing that scared me the most, though, is Verona is doing this weird thing where when she flicks her sight off and on, there's this small moment just when she's turning it off and on where it works differently and she gets a different look at the hand. And that, I mean, this has to be a thing. I don't know what it means, but I know that it means something. Like the fact that her sight works differently for just an instant. Is it being intentionally dampened or altered, or is that just like it naturally tuning itself? Like, what does it mean that it works differently for a fraction of a second?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? I wasn't sure what to make of it either. My gut reaction to it though was that this is the sign that Verona is becoming more and more other. Is like her sight starting to be different and kind of at the periphery of being different, and therefore being only immediately different when she switches it. It doesn't feel super strong, but that's all I could really think of.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like something like that. It's also though just on the other side of things, like the fact that Verona sort of figured that out and started using it is just kind of, scarily competent as well. She just instantly sort of starts gaming the system with it, and she gets to see the snake ring, which is the important bit of information.
Yes, to confirm
that she's able
that's...
to give to Miss later.
Exactly.
So it's I don't know. I feel like there's something to this ability, but it's also great at just how quickly Verona is able to use it. And in fact, actually, when this sort of happens, there's I think the reactions of Verona and Lucy are so important. Like Lucy kind of has this noble, she wants to stay and protect Avery, and Verona has to sort of be the pragmatic one and be like, what the fuck are we gonna do?
Yeah, I think she says, even if we had weapons out and were ready, we couldn't have done shit. And I'm like, yeah, Verona, like you couldn't have done anything there.
Yeah, exactly. And Lucy comments on this a bit later, and we'll get to that. But I just loved how instantly believable these responses were. Of Lucy was like, "No, I have to stay here and I have to protect her," and Verona is sort of that one who's like, "We can't do that. We need to go and ask Miss." And like she's willing to leave Avery there because she knows that the better thing to do, big picture, is go and find Miss.
I mean, they literally can't do anything here, right? I feel for Lucy because obviously it's just a situation where you feel like you should be able to do something, but you just can't. Like, go get the adults.
Yeah, but it's just like it was such a believable little character moment. Like I really liked it, and then we do find Miss, and she drops some really important new knowledge on us here that she didn't actually just escape from the paths cleanly. She was found and bound by some sort of really competent finder who basically had a harem of others that he kept around himself and used as
as meat shields.
Meat shields to make his way through the paths.
Yeah.
And Miss comments that she has been reflecting on that a lot recently.
Oh, Miss, I love you so much. I know you're so suspicious, but God, I really hope we see more of Miss. I hope this isn't it.
Yeah, me too. So let's just dive into this now. Like, obviously, I sort of compared Miss to Alexander a bit before, and it's because, like, to varying degrees, they both feel like the mastermind puppeteers to me of the respective groups. Like, Miss has sort of been at least the front man for controlling the situation in Kennet. She has felt like the de facto leader. And she always, again, she shares that trait with Alexander where she's just always kind of able to pick things. She picks Snowdrop's gimmick so quickly. She always figures out like what's going on with a concerning amount of accuracy. Like she knows instantly that it's Nicolette because of the snake ring. Which is just like she seems to know a lot about the Bellangers.
Almost as much as Alexander himself. Hold on. Wait a second.
But yeah, so like I think what's interesting is I started to draw this parallel around the same time Miss sort of mentioned, she's like, oh, I'm starting to think on that practitioner I met on the paths, who presumably she managed to find a way out because he's still there or he's dead. She doesn't really give a shit. But if we compare her to Alexander for a bit, like she's someone who took 3 young women who were, becoming others and suffering for various reasons, and she's taken them under her wing and turned them into practitioners. It's not that different to what happened to Nicolette. So she's not that different to Alexander, except here she actually starts to put herself on the line, and I wonder if this is what she started to... Has she sort of started to think, oh, am I any better than someone like Alexander if I'm not willing to put myself on the line for these three, like when Avery's in danger? Like, I'm choosing to take a really noble and positive interpretation of her going back into the past for Avery. It's not just her running away from practitioners to the past, but her sort of realizing she's not any better than these practitioners she hates if she's not willing to help Avery.
Yeah, definitely. She's kind of coming to a realization. She's growing a heart. It's great. I mean, she wasn't heartless before, but she's kind of, I think, when we had the awakening back at the start of this story, only Charles was freaking out that they were bringing 3 13-year-olds into this world, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that Miss is now kind of being confronted with the reality of the situation that they are being put in. Like, when she told Avery, hey, this would be a cool ritual for you to do, and it turns out that it's potentially going to have her lost with a capital L. I think that's Miss kind of having a realization about just what she's done.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing is, like, Miss had what I would describe as an understandable and possibly not even incorrect bias against practitioners. And so she was willing to turn these 3 into practitioners, I think, with the idea that they would eventually become others, so it wouldn't matter. But in general, like, she tends to hate practitioners, and based on what we saw in 2.Z, I don't blame her. But, like, I wonder if there was this realization she's had that, because she sort of starts to talk here about how she's actually starting to respect these 3. And maybe there's this sense of, oh, maybe practitioners aren't inherently bad. It's these shitty systems they're making it. And that's like another part of like, oh, I need to rise above this and I need to go save Avery, because it's not that these 3 are bad because they're practitioners. It's like practitioners are bad because it's such a cutthroat world. And if I want to be better. I think she actually sort of explicitly says that to Charles and Verona as she leaves. She's like, if nothing else, I hope I've inspired you to be better. And that's where, like, I think there's this real noble angle of her realizing that, she's become part of this cycle with practitioners, even though she didn't really mean to, but the cycle's the problem, not the practitioners themselves. And if she can be better, then hopefully, well, I mean, it's better for her conscience and it's better for the world, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll get to the end of this chapter later, but for this part, Miss is kind of discussing the options of what they can do with Lucy and Verona. 2 of the 3 options involve walking the path, so they decide they need to get some more ribbon in case they want to do some of these options, while Lucy heads off to kind of make sure no one from Avery's family notices that she's missing, which, I mean...
As if they would.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah.
No, that was mean.
Shame on you.
No, I love how competent and on task everyone is here. Like, this is just like such good competency, which you don't get in too many stories. Like, there's no arguing until right at the end, but it's all just like constructive criticism type stuff. Like, it's, if somebody has a bad idea, it's just like, I don't think that will work because XYZ. It's not like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, they're not panicking so much. They're just kind of working it out as a team. And this is the trio of Lucy, Verona, and Miss. And I really liked it. The one exception is sort of right towards the end when Lucy just starts to lose it and is getting really mad because they weren't warned that this is an option. Which is an argument I find myself flip-flopping on how fair it is of Lucy to claim that, because, like, I mean, first of all, it's not as if this ritual was presented as safe, I think, in the first place.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a sense of, if you know the rules, you should be fine. But, like, as Verona and Miss point out, this isn't really something they could have foreseen. And at what point do the Kenneteers have to take responsibility for the fact that they keep taking risks? But so, like, I don't know. Part of me just thinks like Lucy's just mad and she's venting in a way that maybe isn't the correct vector, but also kind of is because Miss gave them this stupid ritual. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I kind of agree with Verona here, where, like, first of all, being a practitioner is dangerous. You should accept a base level of danger. Okay. Second of all, like, should Miss preface everything they do with like, and remember, if someone externally unexpectedly attacks, you might be in additional trouble. Like, I don't know. Come on.
Yeah, I think you can't ever account for all the potential risks is part of the point.
Yeah.
But again, like Miss is the one who intentionally hid a lot of the risks from them to get them to awake. So it's like, maybe the anger isn't fair in this exact instance, but it is a sentiment that has been building up in a lot of other reasonable examples of it, Like, it's not an unfair feeling in general. It's just maybe this isn't the example that's fair.
Yeah. True. I think there are other examples that are probably better, and that's probably why Lucy is upset about it, is because this does seem to happen a few times.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, at what point do you say, okay, then stop doing this shit? Like, at
then
what point
back out of the situation you're in.
At what point do we say it's your fault for thinking that it was okay to do this ritual instead of hitching a ride with Reagan?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
So Verona makes it home and heads into her basement, kind of reminiscing about these costumes and some possible good times with her dad before he shows up himself to ruin any potential goodwill that he might have earned. God, can we talk about... I want to touch on this bit first, though, which is that we get this line from Verona, and I'm going to read it out. Here it is. For the first time, the skinned meat things and that spiderwebby plastic wrap felt a little bit sinister. How the fuck? What do you mean for the first time, Verona? What the fuck is wrong with you? Are you kidding me? For the first time, this flesh wrap that has existed in your sight has seemed sinister? What?
I love how Verona always operates on a more, like we find out that the costumes that her dad was making for us, like, she was dressing up as, like, the supervillain. Or there's one which is like a fucking Elizabeth Bathory costume.
There's a cat. One is just a cat costume, which of course.
Yeah. But like, for those who don't know, Elizabeth Bathory is like the most prolific female serial killer of all time, and apparently bathed in the blood of young virgin victims to maintain her youth. So of course we have like an 11-year-old girl dressing up in a costume. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's so Verona. Like, I think Verona is exactly that kind of person who would have seen all this stuff and been like, "Oh, this is neat." Like, she probably watches horror movies for fun and doesn't get scared. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing, just like as she is walking home and these skinned meat things are sinister for the first time, she's also having a bit of a conversation with Lucy. And I just wanted to bring this up because it's this really good moment where Lucy is like, sometimes you drive me up the wall, but I'm really glad that you're the one who's here with me right now. And like, I totally get this because Verona is kind of frustratingly not serious and calm in most of these situations, but this is exactly the kind of crisis where you need that. Like, you need someone who's still able to think. And I mean, it does get to her, obviously. Like, as we said, these horrifying things that she sees start to feel horrifying. But it's like moments like this, like we sort of talk about how the Kennedys complement each other. And this is exactly this kind of crisis, I think, where Verona is so important because she's someone who, I mean, she's basically been training herself not to feel with her dad. And that's actually kind of what you need right now, someone who can keep their head.
Yeah, someone who can kind of help everything stay cool is definitely what they need. Just because otherwise, like, you can't let yourself panic because that's time that is being lost, right?
Yeah, and that's what she's able to sort of talk Lucy down. When Lucy starts to do that towards the end of the thing with Miss, she's like, look, like, you're kind of right. Or she's like, I don't necessarily agree with this, but like, whatever. It's like, we just need to focus on saving Avery right now. And like, you just need someone who's still kind of coming across as calm and simplifying things for you like that in moments like this.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, this is, whereas like something like the Hungry Choir, like in 1.z, that was Avery's time to shine. Avery jumped in head first and, beat the shit out of a bunch of waifs, and that's what she's kind of good at. And this is Verona's case.
Yeah. So let's talk about this part where she almost has a good experience with her dad, shall we?
Well, not quite. She remembers having good experiences with her dad before he turned into what he is.
No. It basically is like the more he's absent from the story, the more you think that he's redeemable. But then, of course, he comes back in and dashes all that goodwill.
Yeah, well, I started to build this sense of hope because she's going through the costumes and she's thinking about how great they were and how he would like make them for her. And there was that last one and it wasn't quite what she wanted, and she wasn't able to hide her disappointment and she hurt him. And there was this sense of like, like that one was my fault, which is just this little moment of like treating him as a whole person again. And so that was sort of like, oh, okay. It's good. She talks about this weird project he's got where they're trying to renovate the basement or something, and she thinks about how that might actually be his idea of quality time. There's like these moments where she's starting to consider his point of view and empathize. And I was like, oh, like this connection might be reforming. Is there hope here if he starts to do the same? And then he comes down the stairs and opens his stupid fucking mouth, and I was like, I hate this guy. I hate him so much.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. It really hurts, right? There's this moment where Verona, like, just like begs him, be a good dad one time. And in my heart, I'm like, oh my God, is this it? Is it finally? Are we finally going to break through? And no, it doesn't. He fucks it up, and she kind of panics and freaks out and runs away, and it's horrifying.
I think. The crazy bit is to me, because I think another moment to me, and this is a bit where she's like, please, just this once. Like, this is a 10 out of 10. I just need you to have my back.
Yeah.
And he's sort of like, why don't you listen to me
his response is, just this once? What are you talking about? I'm like, fucking hell.
Well, no, and then he goes on this rant where he's like, why don't you listen to me just once? And it's like, what are you, 5? Like, he just no user. And, I mean, she tries the hugging thing as well. Like, this is, like, she tries so hard here to actually be like treat him as an equal, and she tries to hug him, and her dad just kind of rejects it. And are you familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yeah.
Well, I guess for those who may not know, it's this like idea that there are sort of in general 5 ways that people express love or want love expressed to them, and it, like you can use it to like. If relationships aren't working, you can sort of look at them through this lens. It's worked great for me in the past, but it jumped out to me here because like I think Verona's love language is I think it's called like physical affection or something. Well, she's always trying to hug people to make things better, and that's what she's trying to do here. Whereas like I think her dad's love language, if he's still capable of such, is like words of affirmation. I think is what it's called. Like he wants to be praised and told he's doing a good job. And like part of the problem you can sort of see in this instance is like these two have completely incompatible love languages, and they're not equipped to talk in the other person's one. What they need is therapy.
Yes. Again, it's kind of like we've gotten past the point where I can ascribe it to that. Like,
I mean, that's like an aspect of it. Like this would be one of the many sessions of therapy they have could narrow down on this for just a little bit to help them learn to communicate a bit better, which would be the first brick of rebuilding this bridge.
Yeah. There's this moment where Verona says Lucy's mum, Jasmine, is a single mother and she isn't a piece of shit, basically. And I'm like, yes. And you see that get through to him. Finally, you see it get through to him that he is a piece of shit, I think. I don't know. We'll see, but...
I don't know. He just gets a dark look, which I read as more combative.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a sense... Verona sort of laments the fact that she doesn't think this is going to get through to him at all. We'll see. Like, it's interesting because she's under pressure here, and this is just sort of one of the instances where she can't just appease him or... like dodge him, like he kind of makes that impossible. And so it's sort of a confrontation that on the one hand feels overdue, but also feels like they've probably done this 100 times before. So, I mean, we'll see if this leads to anything.
Yep. We'll see.
Afterwards.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but I've been hopeful before, so.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with these sorts of things is what can happen is if they have this sort of moment that they might have a sort of conversation about it, but the old patterns reemerge too easily. like it can be hard without a big change of circumstance, like Verona just leaving the house. It's hard to escape these sorts of patterns.
Yeah, I don't know. Something needs to break through, right? I
Yeah.
can't be like this forever, please. So yes, Verona leaves with the ribbon and goes back to the cabin, cutting it up. And Miss kind of starts inspecting the ritual and seeing what was going on.
Yeah. And obviously, like, Verona chats with Matt a bit here before Miss shows up, and she's just, I mean, she sort of had to primally scream at and spit on her father to leave, and she's now just empty. And it makes sense to me. Like, you feel that way after a big sort of confrontation or something like that, and it was honestly surprising to me that Matthew didn't really get it. Like, for a guy walking around with doom inside of himself, he seems pretty bad at reading the room when someone's, like, depressed.
Yeah, he's yeah. I mean, he just doesn't get it. Luckily, Lucy comes in. And she knows what's going on.
She immediately, like, looks at Verona and just hugs her, which, again, like, I'm convinced that's Verona's love language. So, good friend, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So she fully gets a read on it. Like, she comes in and is like, oh, and the stuff with your dad will be over soon. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get it, because whenever I learn that Verona's heading home, I also expect her to have a horrible interaction with her dad. So it's fair enough to be on the lookout for that after you know that she's going to visit her house.
Yeah. What I think she actually says, like, Verona sent a text around being like, oh, my dad might call, which Lucy is probably smart enough to realize is code for, it didn't go well. Like, even by regular my dad standards, this is bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah.
Now to just get my tinfoil on for a sec. There's a bit where they mention using the dog tags to summon John after he knocked Nicolette off the road, which I was like, oh, that's a really cool use of the dog tags. I hadn't thought of that before. But Verona does this and summons him, and he thanks her. But not 5 paragraphs beforehand, John is listed as a member of the town that is already in the clearing. So typo or conspiracy theory?
It's a typo, obviously. It's obviously a typo.
Conspiracy theory. Yeah, I mean, it probably would have blown up pretty quickly if it wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really wanted to read something into that.
Yep. But we get some cool John scenes here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When he does show up for the second time, he talks about how he's going to pay Matthew for the damage to his car, and everyone's like, where do you get the money? And he's like, oh, I take it off the people I killed. And it's like, he's actually a murder hobo. Like, he's living that murder hobo lifestyle. This money is loot that others dropped.
Yeah, I saw a comment that I really liked that was basically like he's in a video game where he kills monsters and then takes gold coins from their corpses.
Yeah. You know how he talks about during the day he just sits there and plays video games? That's actually him training for his afternoons and going around killing monsters for loot. It's like he's someone who's playing Monster Hunter, but when they're not hunting monsters, they sit down and play Monster Hunter. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, do what you know, I guess. So Miss and the gathered others all kind of arrive, and Miss kind of runs through the options, and Alpy reveals her own discovery, which is that she's found Snowdrop.
Yes. Okay, so quickly, before we get to Snowdrop, John mentions that Nicolette has this shadow around her head, and obviously she left 2.Z with these, like, doom spirits or whatever in her head, like, giving her things, but so do you reckon it's that, or Matthew's actually the one who says she might have looked at something too dark for too long? And when he mentions that, I was thinking of the wolf who cast a very large and dark shadow that didn't fit her frame when Nicolette was looking at her. So like fuck, what if they've brought part of the wolf back through Nicolette? Like, what's happening here? Am I reading too much into it or not?
I got the vibe. Week. I mean, my gut reaction was that it was just the spirits in her head, but maybe there's something else going on here. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I just the idea of the wolf appearing in the real world terrified me, and I kind of want it to happen.
We'll see. I think whatever happens, we're not done with the wolf yet. So, here's something.
I mean, definitely.
here's something. Miss
Yep.
discovered the detour is revealed here. That kind of explains why it seems a bit out of place when compared to the rest of the ritual, because for most of people who attempt the path, you have to sacrifice your boon companion. That's the only option. But Miss has somehow discovered that there is this other detour. That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah, she talked about having this intuition for the paths and like that.
Yes.
Because she talks about how it's apparently unknown to everyone else in the world, and she was going to sell it for information, which, considering this is like Finders 101, like that feels like a particularly juicy bounty. Like she should be able to sell that for a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm trying to think of a comparison. It's like discovering a sixth flavor of taste.
Yeah.
That's like it's a big one. It feels
like a big one. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe people are discovering new things about, about this all the time, but I don't know. Doesn't seem like it.
To be fair, misintuiting stuff like this and getting it and sharing it finally makes sense to me. How these people actually figure out, like how Finders figured out all the rules to things like the Forest Ribbon Trail. Because the only other explanation is that like 10,000 people lost their lives to figure out the nuances of every rule. So the only other thing that would make sense to me is something like Mist that just kind of grokks it, replaces one person, comes out and sells that information.
Yeah, true. Maybe it's maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like that's the way knowledge about this stuff kind of spreads and evolves. I don't know. Something that I really liked as well was we find out that the reason that Snowdrop got away, presumably, and the way that Alpi found Snowdrop is because Snowdrop did the opposite of what everyone would have expected and didn't go back to Kennet. She went to where Avery was going to end up, because that's just how contrarian she is. And I just think that's great. Like, of course, that's how she gets away from Nicolette.
I didn't get that. I was a little confused at that part. Okay. Because that's right, Alpi was going to meet Avery there, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So,
okay.
Of course,
I didn't
Nicolette
put that
wouldn't
together.
have caught her because she didn't go back to Kennet. Isn't that hilarious? I love that.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's great. I had been assuming that Snowdrop was actually in Nicolette's car, which I thought was a bit weird that Nicolette never figured that out. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it's funny though as well, because when Snowdrop comes in again, like I was just talking in 2.z about how hilarious it was to me that they didn't get Snowdrop's gimmick, and we're like, haha, yes, burn it down. It was the complete opposite here. Like, it's only one chapter later, and I was like, oh god, guys, please get it. I can't deal with this. Just somebody say it.
And like Miss
and like Miss gets it like absurdly quickly. But it was like, just for that brief moment when nobody got it, I was like, I can't handle this. Like, they need to get it soon. Thank God for Miss, and we're so fucked without her. I don't know what they're gonna do without Miss. They're so screwed.
Yeah, this can't be the series wrap on Miss, right? God, I just can't handle it. It would be too bad. So Miss goes to open negotiations with the Bélangers, and Verona sits down with Charles to get the goss on them.
Yes, and as we sort of already touched on, Charles explains that Alexander specializes in strife, which means it surrounds him all the time, and is why people like Seth and Nicolette are getting into little fights, and Alexander just watches and does nothing. But yeah, hopefully that is something we can use, because I think the togetherness of the Kennet others, and particularly the Kenneteers, is probably something that will be so alien to Alexander and the Augurs that they may not expect it, and they'll be outclassed in terms of turning people against each other.
Yeah. I think the fact that this is such a unique situation is going to be their asset in this circumstance, right? I really think it will bode well, hopefully.
Me too. I think the other thing that Charles mentions is that when they were working together, him and Alexander, they were actually planning to make like an incarnation of strife, is I think what he says, which I'm like, okay, so obviously it didn't work out with Charles, but does that mean Alexander stopped on this plan? Like, he forswore Charles, but presumably he actually had intent. And because what I'm thinking is, I can think of an incarnation that I would describe as quite strifey. Like, did Alexander make the Hungry Choir?
Interesting. I don't think so. I don't know. I like this. I like the fact that there's something here, but it could be any incarnate. Like, I don't. The Carmine Beast could be interpreted as an incarnation of strife. God knows.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I was just kind of like, to me, it's felt weird. This like to introduce this idea that that's what they were trying to do, and I was just thinking, there's no reason Alexander would have had to give up on that after, ruining Charles. Like he could have just gone to the next, whatever Charles's thing was called, I forget, and tried to do it with them.
Yeah, true.
Also, they say Lucy's come up with a plan to get Avery out, but they don't tell us what it is, which is cruel.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out. That's a 3.2 thing, I think.
I hope so. It might, like, if 3.2 is the negotiations, it may be a 3.3 thing. Could be a week away.
Yeah, true. Who knows? Yeah, God, I don't know. We'll have to find out. And then, yeah, we get the rap on Miss, hopefully not forever. And Snowdrop says, good riddance. Well put, Snowdrop. Obviously, hopefully she sticks around. And that's the end of 3.1.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, Wildbow's done that classic thing where this whole time I'm always like, Miss, I don't quite trust her. She's pulling the strings. She's shifty. Like, I think she's not the villain, but I don't think she's all there. And then just in one chapter, she does a bunch of heroic shit and like, is presumably going to be lost for a long time now. And I'm like, oh God, we need her so bad. Like, she's so precious. Just like, done a complete 180 on how I feel about her just as she disappears from the story.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll hopefully see her again. So, on to the bonus material for this week, which is interview notes 2, which is rounding up notes from the interviews of the others that we've been chatting to in the past few chapters.
Yeah, and this felt like the recap of Arc 2 in a way to me. Like it's we kind of got the same in interview notes 1. It kind of took all the big others from the previous arc and just kind of summarized what we know about them again. Which is obviously fun. It was cool to see what goblins actually look like in canon.
Yes, God, the pictures of the goblins. I love the picture of Toadswallow. He looks so great.
I love his monocle.
Yeah.
I like, again, Toadswallow on a separate picture to the rest of them. He's always listed separately. What's the deal with it? It's driving me nuts.
Yeah. I know you're hot on the something's up with Toadswallow trip, but I don't know if I'm there with you.
You wait. It'll be something. Also, Cherry Pop is in this, and it just made me realize, when do we get our Cherry Pop and Snowdrop interaction scene?
Pop and Drop, the spin-off coming soon.
That's the one thing I need in my life right now is Cherry Pop and Snowdrop having a conversation. It would be fucking hilarious.
Yep.
Also, I love the picture of Miss.
Oh yeah, MGX.
It's a funny joke.
And it ends with "Bye, Miss" at the end. Oh my heart! Please don't do this.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced Miss is gone. Maybe we'll see her in an epilogue, or she'll be able to Deus Ex, like towards the climax of the story. But I think, just thinking about how we've just set up Alex as a kind of opposite of her, I think it really feels like losing Miss is very bad for everyone, which is why I think it's going to happen. It really escalates the tension.
Yeah, I getcha. It's it's the kind of thing that's just gonna fuck shit up so badly that I know it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like as this touched on, she felt like the unofficial leader of the town, and it's gonna be bad without her.
Yeah, I agree. I think she really was like a calming influence on the entire town, right? And without it, I just don't see how. I mean, we have John and Matthew and Edith, and they're kind of okay, but the rest of them are just fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, Miss was the brains as well.
Yeah.
Like from everything that we've seen, it seemed like. Someone like John, I just don't see him holding it together in the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, so that sort of ends everything we've got to cover from the chapters today. But we wanted to do a quick little bonus bit.
Yeah, bonus bit.
It's time for what I believe is the first proper monster corner of Pale Reflections.
How has it been, 9 episodes and we haven't done one yet?
Yeah, it's a good question, but it's here now, and it is on brownies, which were the little house elf things we saw in the Blue Heron Institute.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So,
so
what are they?
yeah, they're kind of, I mean, yeah, well, they're a bit odd. So they're from British folklore primarily, um, and the Scots call them brownies. So that's how you can expect it to be spelt if Alpi ever talks about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they look like what we would think of when we think goblins. Like, so the pictures from the 3.1 extra material. That is kind of what they look like. They're these short, like ugly, lumpy, hairy things. But generally they're actually classified more as like fairies or household spirits.
Mm.
So it's like they're kind of this third thing. I mean, there's actually lots, like, and in fact, like the articles on these things compare them to lots of other household helper spirits. Like this sort of lore was rampant throughout Europe in particular. But to talk about like the fairy and goblins like spectrum, we sort of talked about how they're opposites in Pale. Brownies would maybe be somewhere in the middle. Like they're goblin-esque in some ways, particularly appearance, but they behave and their rules around them are closer to fairy type ones.
Yeah, I'm kind of remembering the story of like the cobbler and the elves go and like make shoes for him every night, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
what I'm picturing with these, right?
Yeah, like that's pretty much it. So the idea with the brownie was that like particularly farmers, like farmhouses would end
Mm,
up with a brownie, and brownie would just do all the chores for the family at night, like sweep and
yeah,
clean stuff. And there were all these rules around them, sort of changed by region, and even like individual brownies sometimes had their own rules when they started haunting, for want of a better word, like a house. Um, so like some of the rules, if you give a brownie a piece of clothing, they will leave you forever. Which kind of feels like where all the Dobby stuff from Harry Potter might have come from. But like if you for many of the brownies, you have to leave a bowl of milk somewhere for them, and if you don't do that, they'll leave forever.
yeah.
If they feel at all offended, they'll leave forever. And there's all sorts of weird ass shit that will like offend them, and cause them to leave. Sometimes they'll trash your house before they leave. And like a lot of them, like these specific brownies who had names and stuff, even just using that name would be enough to offend them and make them leave.
Mm,
Um, so like that doesn't quite map to exactly what we saw in Pale, but it's sort of close enough that you can see the inspiration. Like Walbo's taken these concepts and extended them to make it like these little fairies that seem to indenture themselves to accrue a karmic debt so that they can fuck you over later. Like it's this weird fairy play where they act as servants so that they accrue debt, or so that you accrue debt, so that when you finally break the deal, they can fuck you up. It's a fun idea.
yeah, I like it. I like the idea of them making deals with these brownies with the idea of like, yeah, we'll help you out, but if you do this one wrong thing, that of course in stories like this you always eventually do, things go to
Yeah.
shit.
Like I think Nicolette says that it's been 6 years since somebody last fucked up the deal, which means the debt is now bad enough that that person wouldn't be allowed to die. Which is
Yikes.
crazy. But yeah, the brownies in actual mythology are a bit more of a mixed bag. Like some of them were interpreted as quite benevolent. Other ones were closer to this idea of like they're kind of holding you hostage in a weird way.
Mm.
With all these rules. Yeah, and like some of them would trash your house and stuff, so there were bad interpretations. In fact, and again, like if your house had a brownie, it was often like if some farmhouses were believed to have a brownie, it would be like their neighbors would get real shitty with them because it's like, oh, their farm is doing better because they have a brownie. And that's why they're so much more on top of their shit.
Mm.
And you could get like accused of witchcraft at certain times, which obviously in the world of Pale was probably accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, interesting stuff. I mean, I like with all these monster corner bits, I always try to think about like where this myth might have come from. Like, how does someone become convinced that a little goblin is living in their house doing the chores for them at night in exchange for milk?
Maybe they just had a really helpful neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, the best I can think of is
misinterpreted
if you had like an ugly little orphan or something come and just live in your house and do the chores in exchange for like stealing some of your food.
Fair enough.
Like, is that it? Like, that's
Yeah.
pretty dark. That's all I could think of.
Good stuff. Classic. I love finding out
Um,
about the real world magical things behind inspiring these things in Pale.
Yeah, it's always so fun. And that is brownies.
Yeah. Next up, why don't we take a look at some predictions that people have left in our Pale Predictor sheet, where we can, people can make all their Galaxy Brain predictions, and we'll see who turns out to be correct.
Yes. So I pulled out a prediction by Robin, who basically drops the theory that Lucy will take John Styles as her familiar, and he will take the form of a German Shepherd, which is just a nice little extra bold part of the prediction. He will turn into a German Shepherd, which
I mean, the German Shepherd bit really sold it for me.
Yeah, I can see these two making a good, like, couple isn't the right word. Like, I don't know, pairing. No, that still feels, I don't know what the word is here. Familiar practitioner pair.
A dream team.
Yeah, there is a bit of synergy there. And like, honestly, you could do a lot worse for a familiar than John. Let's be honest. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he'd do well. I think it'd be a great one. I put out a prediction by a user, David Hunt, whose prediction is that this is a whodunit. We haven't had a whodunit in a while, and I really like this one. Charles is behind it all, because we know Charles's shtick was creating others, right? As a favor for Matthew, he created Edith, or maybe the girl by candlelight that became Edith. And so he has enough knowledge that power over her that he's kind of holding her and Matthew hostage, and forced Matthew / Edith to take down the Carmine Beast. So Charles is behind it all, with the end goal of getting himself unforsworn, which is something that we talked about, the appeals needing to appeal to that group. So that's seemingly the motive.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes sense from a thematic standpoint. I don't know if I like the idea of the person who was broken down and beaten by the system being this evil mastermind who then kills people.
True.
I don't know. There's that doesn't feel great to me, but like I could see it working. I mean, I like this connection that even if he didn't create the girl by candlelight, Charles is probably hugely important to Matthew for that reason. Like, Matthew presumably got tips on how to help or even shape her off of Charles. So there may be a bit of a debt there. I don't know.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't turn out to be as far as, and therefore he killed the Carmine Beast.
I think there's something to this prediction.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So now let's talk about the answers we got to our discussion question, because damn, there were some real good ones in here. We talked about the idea of designing a path based on a loose story type, and man, we got so many great ones.
And not just great ones, but they're all so long. And I quickly realized the problem with this discussion question, which is like, we can't possibly
discuss them,
give them the coverage they deserve, because we'll be here for 4 hours if we want to read them all out, or even just one of them out. So we're going to only cover a couple and cover them quite briefly, but seriously, that you should go to the Pale Amalgam sheet, which we link in the show notes below. Go to the thread for 2.8 and 2.9.
Yeah, and enjoy
and read some of these, because they're great.
Yes, they're very good. We got one from Wildbow, a user named Wildbow.
Yes, which did we specify that we were after fan fiction? Because if we did, then unfortunately Wildbow's disqualified.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk through all these, but so many of them are so great. I don't even know if it's worth us all we're going to be doing is giving you a worse experience than reading them. I don't know.
This Wildbow one is great.
It's insane. It gave me cartoon, Animaniacs, Looney Tunes style vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, so it's like this path where you're actually like falling at terminal velocity for the whole thing.
But falling through a like vertical street, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. And it's a path that you get to from other paths. It's not directly accessible. There's all sorts of great stuff in this. I do want to try and highlight some of the other ones, but like seriously, go read them if these at all pique your
Yeah,
interest.
they're really good.
Bavarian Barbarian just sort of linked us to this thing called the Left Right game, which is this really popular creepypasta that I kind of tried to skim the basic plot points, and it's like this, you do this sort of ritual of driving in your car in a certain way, and you end up in a parallel world. It is very pathy. And in fact, as I was like trying to look it up, there's a podcast adaptation of this creepypasta, starring Tessa Thompson.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, Amazon is working with Tessa to build a TV version of this creepypasta. So, I mean, you should go read it, but if you don't have the time right now, there's a podcast and soon to be TV show covering this path-like ritual. So you'll get your chance.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, check out the podcast / TV show, I guess. I saw one, a user called Comb Jelly posted this in our Discord. It was the Train to Nowhere, which was this great prompt for a creepy train path that basically let Comb to write really interesting others that appear on it as like other passengers,
Yeah, it was. I was reading this and I was just like, oh, fucking, of course, Infinity Train. Like this is such a good premise, this idea of like carriages and passengers. Like, I mean, there's a reason a lot of stories tap into this sort of train idea, and it's because they're simultaneously isolated and flexible because of all the carriages. So I can't believe Comb Jelly's the only one who did this. It's great.
I think there was one other one, but man, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I really liked the one by Zakatigi, which was sort of tapping into these stories based on like, a door to another universe, like Narnia type stuff, / like endless haunted corridor mansion things, like, those hotel floors or haunted mansions where like doors lead to stuff that isn't like in the space-time continuum.
Yeah.
Again, I can't really do it justice. But there's this really cool theme around all the boons and some of the challenges where it's all about equipping you to focus on new ideas. Like, I thought that was a really interesting spin on it, like to get you to, to equip the finder with new ways of thinking, which is what these sorts of stories generally try to lead to.
Yeah. Look, they were all great. I think, there are a lot of really, really good ones in there. So go check them out, folks.
Yeah.
What a great discussion question. Loved it. So do we have another one for next week?
Yes. So our next discussion question is a bit more old school. We're simply just asking, now that we've seen some other practitioners in the Belongers, how do you think the Kenneteers, or how good a deal do you think the Kenneteers got in how they awoke?
Yeah, good question. Leave your answers to that in our discussion thread, which you'll be able to find linked down in the show notes down below.
Yes. You can also find us on Twitter. It's at MediaMD Podcast for now. That's where I do my live reads, and we post the episodes there, and we retweet the other stuff on the Tooth Network. Lots of cool content.
All kinds of great capital C content.
If you send us Bitcoin, we'll send you double back. Just check out the address in one of our tweets.
Yep. If you like the shows on the Doof Media Network, why not check out the website? It's got a merch store. It's got all kinds of cool things on there.
I forgot about that.
I know, right? All kinds of other great content that you can also enjoy.
Yes. We've mentioned Decomposing Worm before.
Mm-hmm.
They've just switched to a fortnightly format. I think they call it bi-weekly because for some reason Americans are under the impression they can't use the word fortnight, even though it's way more like clear what you mean. Anyway, yes. Anyway, it's fortnightly now, which is like probably sensible because they have such long episodes and they cover so much content. So go check it out if you haven't. I think, now they're probably about 2 months away from finishing. And it's really good stuff. Like Matthias and Clarence have a great dynamic and a lot of cool insights into a story. I'm sure everyone listening to this has read and talked about a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. if you're looking for a box to put your old gold coins into instead of blood, why not check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow, where you can support Wildbow in all of his great authorial work.
Yes, without him, we wouldn't have had anything to talk about today, and this would have been a much shorter episode.
Or it would have been longer, but just more boring, I reckon.
We would have just talked about it. It's quite sunny outside
today. There was just a beautiful sunset outside my window. So if you heard me typing, I was just messaging somebody to say, go check out this beautiful sunset. And that's the kind of content that you would expect if this story didn't exist. So
this is the kind of boring bullshit that would happen without Warbo. Yeah. So go show him some support.
Exactly. And I guess that's the end of our episode, huh? So thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week as we dive into On the Lamb. No, Out on a Limb is what it's actually called.
See ya.
Bye.